today. My name is Mrs. Babawale, your oral English and communication teacher. Last week, we started a topic, poetry. This week, we shall be rounding up on that topic. We learned what a poem is, and the elements that come together to form a poem. I used the illustration of a mother cooking a vegetable soup. When we want to cook vegetable soup, we add some ingredients together. Ingredients like vegetable, palm oil, salt, Maggi, meat, fish, and so on. We bring all these ingredients together to form the vegetable soup. Likewise, when you want to write a poem, there are some elements you need to bring together to form a poem. Some elements may not be necessary, like in the case of vegetable soup. If you don't put fish in it, it's still okay, it's still a vegetable soup. If you don't put meat, it is still vegetable soup. But there are some ingredients that are not negotiable. Ingredients like salt, ingredients like the vegetable itself. Without these ones, the vegetable cannot come to, life. So also when you're writing a poem need certain elements to come together to form the poem. Some you may not have them, like the rhyming words, is optional, but some are very important. Like the title, your poem must have a title, for example, and on and on. So today we'll be looking at the tone and mood in poetry. Come along with me as we go through the slides very quickly. Now, when we say tone in poetry, what do we mean? This simply means the writer's attitude towards his poem, towards his characters in the poem, towards the subject in his poem. What is his attitude towards it? For example, you can think of a tone as a kind of music. When you have a sad incident happening, you don't play loud, bright music. You play a solemn, sad one. And when something happy happens, you can now play kind of music to suit that, that instance. So also for tone. A tone can be enthusiastic, it can be fearful, it can be hostile. A tone can be serious. A tone can be sarcastic. A tone can be personal, can be ironic, it can be humorous. Okay? Now, the mood in a poem. What is the mood in a poem? The mood is the emotional atmosphere produced by the author's choice of language. When you read certain poems, you begin to feel a certain way. You could be sad, you could be happy, you could be angry, you could be excited, A certain emotion comes to play when you're reading certain poem. That is the mood that the writer has been able to infuse into the poem so that when you're reading it, the mood can be felt. Now, I want us to quickly do a practical exercise. Close your eyes, everybody. Close your eyes. Now, think on the subject of your poem. That is what you want to write about. Is it you want to write about mommy, about daddy, about family, about your country, about your school, about your pet, or about your career, what you want to be when you grow up, or about, anything actually? Think on it. Close your eyes and think. And try to identify the feeling or the emotion as you think about that subject. For example, when you think about your mommy, all that comes to your mind is love, fondness, happiness, when you think about your pets, fondness and all of that. When you think about your country, some people will feel angry. Some people will feel a kind of regret. As you're having that feeling, let it be expressed in the words that you write. That when I read it, I can feel the same way as you are feeling. Now, try to place a finger on that feeling that you're feeling, that attitude, and identify it. When you identify it, then you will know my poem has such and such tone, serious tone maybe, and the mood is a sad one. Or the tone of my poem has a sarcastic or humorous tone, while the mood is maybe angered, or restless. All right? So I hope you did that practical exercise with me. Good. Now, don't forget, these are nuggets I don't want us to forget. Anytime we talk about poems and we want to write poems down, don't forget that poems are meant to be read out loud for the enjoyment of the listeners or readers. Now, poems are expressions of emotions, ideas, and thoughts. And don't forget, we say writing a poem will require us to search deep within so that we can find the right words. What are the feelings you're having deep within anytime you write about this subject matter? And try to identify your sources of inspiration. Yes, some people, when they go to the beach, when they are, go to the beach, or maybe they walk around in the garden, or they read a book, or they watch a movie, or they're with their loved ones, these instances inspire them to write. So you must identify what inspires you. Is it nature? Is it music like me? Music inspires me a lot. All right? So identify what inspires you so that you can, connect with it, and so that the words can flow. Like I said, poems from this picture that you can see, poems are meant to be read out aloud for people to enjoy. Now, we talked about the ingredients that come together to cook vegetable soup. Now, let us talk about the ingredients that come together to form poems. We talk about figures of speech, and we say that figures of speech are special expressions that don't give out their literary meaning when you come across them, when you read them. Meaning that you can't get their meaning by just reading them, on the surface like that. A figure of speech like, it rained cats and dogs yesterday. If you want to understand that, you can think, okay, it rained cats, and that means cats and dogs were falling down from the sky. No, there's usually a hidden meaning, when it comes to figures of speech and idioms that are not on the surface. They are embedded in the expression itself. And usually the meanings are societal based, meaning when you come across some figures of speech or idioms, the one that has a meaning here in Nigeria, when you go to London or US or any other part of the world, it could have a different meaning. So they are based on societal meaning. Now, let us quickly look at simile. Simile talks about the use of like and as in comparisons. For example, you want to compare, you see a very tall man and you go, whoa, he's as tall as a tree. Now that is simile. And then you come around again, you say, whoa, they fought yesterday like cats and dogs. That doesn't mean they were cats and dogs. It means they fought like cats and dogs. And then you see someone and you go, wow, she is like, she's like a lion when it comes to arguing. That means she is very aggressive. Now, another example of a figure of speech is metaphor. Metaphor is another kind of comparison, but it doesn't use as and it doesn't use like. It just goes straight up and uses the comparison using the object of comparison directly. For example, instead of saying he's as aggressive as a lion, which is simile, For metaphor, you go, he's such a lion. Oh, that lady's such a peacock. Whoa, those children are pigs. Can you see that? There's no us, there's no like, there's nothing like, oh, those children are as dirty as pigs. No, you go, those children are pigs. That is direct comparison. Now, another one quickly, let's look at personification. Personification gives attributes of a living thing to a non-living thing. That is a very interesting way of using language. For example, you want to open a door and the door makes, a kind of noise. And instead of saying the door, creaked or something, you go, the door moaned. It's a human attribute. Okay? You go, the door moaned, or the sky smiled. Okay? Or the trees bowed in respect. Can you see what personification does? Attributing the characteristics of a living thing to a non-living thing. Now, more on poetry. Hyperbole. Hyperbole has to do with exaggeration, just exaggerated speech. That's what hyperbole is all about. When you say, I could eat a horse, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. Or she cried tons of buckets. You're exaggerating, and people know when people are exaggerating, but they don't know. What they don't know is it's a figure of speech called hyperbole. Now, another one is onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is the representation of sounds made by people or things. For example, zoom zoom, the zoom zoom of a car, or the ding dong of a bell, or the bang of a musical instrument, and on and on. Lastly, imagery. When you make use of imagery, you create mental pictures in the mind of the people that are listening or reading. You create a mental picture by the words you use. You make use of nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives. These parts of speech help you to create a picture in the minds of people. For example, if you say, the apple, though very red, is filled with worms. Can you see? I've created a picture in your mind with the words that I say. Okay, I used adjectives, I used noun, I use adverbs, all right? So when you bring them together, you are able to create pictures in the mind of people. Now, time to write a poem. Bring out your paper, bring out your pen, and let us start. Now, don't forget, think of a title and write it down. Then remember that your title is a glimpse of what the poem is about. Remember the mood and the tone you want to convey. Make sure that the words you use show this, that this is the tone you want to convey. This is the mood you want your readers to feel when they are reading the poem. And don't forget all the ingredients that come together to make the poetry, to make a poem. Your figures of speech that we just talked about, imagery, repetition, all right? Don't forget, make use of them, and of course, rhythm, where you use rhyming words, and like you use the rhyming words, they create a sort of rhythm, a sort of flow in the poem. So what are you waiting for? Bring out your pen and paper and let us start.